Okay, this is a video that I'm putting together for the students at St. Louis International School in Milan. The idea of the video is to show them how to build a website, how to set up a MySQL database, and how to have the website, say a client input information into the website that is then saved into the database, and then ultimately at the end you can do a search on the database and find out specific things and find out specific information. What we've decided to do is do it as different football players around the world and the cars that they drive. That's the sort of data that we're going to collect, just as an example. And we're going to use a few programs. We're going to use a program called Brackets to write our code in for HTML and for PHP. We're going to use MAMP as a way to kind of have a local server on our computer, so that students can upload the files, they can work on the SQL database and that sort of stuff from their local machine. So in fact the first thing I'm going to do is start the MAMP. There's an update, we'll do that later. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to start the servers, which actually starts like a local server on your machine. We need to check to make sure that the Apache and the MySQL come up. They'll get a green dot on both of them if it's working correctly, which it does, and the screen will come up with this MAMP page on here. Now the first part of this video, there's several parts of the video, but the first part is we're going to set up a basic database. Okay, so we're going to run from this screen, we're going to go to PHP myadmin. This is where the databases currently are. Now you can do this several ways. You can set this up offline. You can set it up in other programs. There's a program that we use at school called SQL Editor that we set it up first. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to do it straight into MySQL using PHP myadmin. So we're going to click up here and we're going to create new database. We're going to call our new database player data. No spaces, I've just left it all as one word, player data with a capital D, capital P, capital D. I'm going to go create database. Now in here I need to work out a table, so you'll see over on the left hand side here we've got a new database that's created, but we want to make a table. And to start with we're going to make just a single flat database, just one single table. Later we're going to add a second table, and that table will be have a relationship with the first one, but for the purpose of this we're just going to make one to start with. We're going to start with 4 columns, and we're going to call our table players. So I'm just written players, and I've said it's going to have 4 columns to start with. I'm going to hit go, and it comes up and brings this screen up. Now the very first one that I want to do is I want to create a primary key. We've discussed primary keys in class. Students know what they are. Essentially it's a unique element in the table that is different for every single piece of data that goes in. So we're going to call it player ID. We're going to make sure that it's an integer because we're going to increase it in length. We'll give it a length of 20 to start with. We scroll across, we make it auto increment, which means it adds up one at a time. It sets itself up as the primary key, and we just go OK. And now that's going to be our primary key, is going to be our player ID. Now to start with we're going to put in first names. Now I'm not putting any spaces in here. You can actually do spaces. In fact I might even put in an underscore. No, let's just leave it as first names like that, just for the purpose of this. No, let's put an underscore in. Let's work an underscore in because it looks better when it's underscore. Easier to read with the underscore in there. First names, last names, and nationality. So they're the sections that we're going to do in the database. Now, first names, we want them to be characters, so we're going to put variable characters. Most people's names are, I don't know, under 20, but we're going to give them the option of 100 characters for their first names, 100 characters for their last names, and 100 characters for their nationality, just allowing a little bit more space for them. Now we're not going to change any others. That'll do to start with. This is a very simple database for collecting some information. Once we've set that up like this, we hit save. We can go and have a look, and we've got player ID, first underscore names, last underscore names. That should be name. I'll edit that in a minute. And this one's nationality. I'm going to change both of those. Let's change this first one to first name. Save. And let's edit this one, just hit change. We're just going to change that to last name. Hit save. Okay, so there we've set it up, and you can see that the primary key is set up for the player ID and it auto increments. So that's it, we've set up the database. That's the first part of this activity that we needed to do, was to set up the database. We've got to remember that the database name is called player data, and the first table that we're using is going to be called players. Now once you have that set up, we want an easy way to enter the data. Now potentially we could just go to our data, we could browse and see what's in there at the moment. There's nothing in there at the moment, and we could actually go through and we could do SQL, and we could do an insert, hit insert, and we can insert into players and do all that sort of stuff. In fact, this line of code is pretty important, we'll get to that later. We could go through and insert data here, but we're not going to do that. We're going to create a web page where a user can come along, click the buttons, and then they can go through and the data will automatically be entered into the site. So that's it for the first video. What we want to do now is we want to go to brackets, and we're going to start the second part, which is to create the website itself. Right, one more thing just before we start brackets and start the website, just so that we can get to the website and we can see how it works and that sort of stuff, we need to save all of our files that we're using, all of our HTML files, our PHP files, into a folder that MAMP can see. Okay, so at the moment if I click on my website, on the MAMP directory, there's just something that says everything in there. That's a folder that I've used previously. But what we want to do is we want to see our HTML page and our PHP pages. We want to see them in here. So what we would do is we go into our hard drive, you go down to the MAMP folder, we're in applications, so I would click on applications up here, go down to the MAMP folder, and in the MAMP folder there's a folder here called htdocs. And this htdocs, this is where we're going to save everything. So I went applications, I went into MAMP, and then I went into this htdocs folder, and we're going to save everything into here. So if I'm creating a new file in brackets, I'd go to brackets, wait for it to load up. I'm going to go file, new file, okay, cancel that, new file, close all this sort of stuff, file, save as. And when I do a save as, I'm going to save that to my applications, oops, inside applications, come on slow computer, applications, inside applications, I'm going to go to MAMP, down here, into htdocs, and I'm going to save it into here, and I'm going to call it players.html. Alright, so just for example, I'll call it players.html, save it there, and now this new HTML file I'm creating is saved into my MAMP directory in here, which is in the htdocs. Now if I go back onto the website, remember this is a local server essentially, and click my website, there'll be a players.html, and then I can click that from there, and we can start running our website creation from there. Okay, but that navigating to the folder, it's really important that you get it into the right positions.